The morning breaks slowly over a forgotten village, where mist hangs like an old secret above the cracked roofs and crooked fences. Inside one of the smallest houses, a weak beam of sunlight filters through torn curtains, landing on a frail figure sitting beside a half-burned lantern. Noha, a woman of 70, wrapped in a faded shawl the color of ash, sits motionless on a wooden chair that creaks beneath her weight. Her eyes, gray and tired, wander across the room as if searching for someone she once knew but can never call again. Around her, the world is still, only the ticking of an old clock and the soft breath of wind through a broken window keep her company. The walls are lined with memories, a crooked frame with a blurred photograph, a small pair of baby shoes darkened by dust, a blanket folded neatly at the edge of her bed, its once white threads now yellowed with time. Every corner of the room whispers of life that once filled it, laughter, lullabies, the sound of tiny hands clapping, but those sounds have long faded, leaving behind echoes that only she can hear. She rises slowly, each step measured and fragile, and moves toward the cradle that stands in the shadow. It is an old wooden thing, its paint chipped, its joints loose, yet she touches it with a gentleness that could melt stone. Her fingers trace the edges as if the wood still remembers the warmth of a child. "You were so small," she whispers, her voice trembling between guilt and tenderness. The morning light catches the tears that well up in her eyes. They roll down her wrinkled cheeks and fall silently onto the cradle's edge. Outside, the sounds of the village grow, pots clanging, a cow lowing, children running barefoot, but inside Noha's home, time stands still. She has lived in this silence for decades, and in it she finds both punishment and peace. The same villagers who once mocked her now stood in stunned silence. Some wept. Others turned away. The same lips that had called her cursed now whispered prayers for her soul. But it was too late for prayers, for apologies, for anything. As she was led away, Noha turned her head toward her little house one last time. Through the open door, she could see the cradle swaying gently in the wind, as though an unseen hand were still rocking it. A faint smile, broken, trembling, touched her lips. "Sleep, my love," she whispered again, her voice lost in the breeze. "The world can't touch you now." Then she looked up at the sky, where clouds drifted lazily across the light. For a moment, it seemed as if she saw him there, not as the world saw him, but as she first did, tiny and perfect, untouched by cruelty. The camera pulls back slowly, showing the village from above, a place small enough to destroy a life, large enough to forget it tomorrow. Children run past, chasing a ball through puddles, laughter rising where sorrow still lingers. The sound of Noha's lullaby echoes faintly one last time, blending with the wind and fading into silence. The house remains standing, quiet and hollow, a monument to love that couldn't survive the world's judgment. "Noha, where's the baby?" Her head turned slowly, her eyes empty, her face pale as the ashes in her hearth. Her lips parted, and for the first time, she spoke, her voice hollow, distant, like someone speaking from beneath water. "He's gone," she said. "He's sleeping now." Gasps filled the room. A woman screamed. Someone dropped a basket of bread. It hit the ground with a dull thud. The whispers returned, those same voices that had haunted her before, now louder, sharper, triumphant in their cruelty. What did she do? Dear God, she's lost her mind. It's her punishment. She was cursed. The words swirled around her like knives, cutting through the last thin thread of her sanity. Noha didn't fight them. She didn't defend herself. She only looked down at her trembling hands, still stained with what love had done when fear took over. "I saved him," she murmured quietly, as if convincing herself. "I saved him from them." The village elder stepped forward, his eyes full of disbelief and sorrow. He'd known Noha since she was a girl, bright, kind, full of laughter. Now she was unrecognizable. "Noha," he said gently, "what have you done?" His voice broke on the last word. She looked at him, not with defiance, but with exhaustion, like someone who had walked too far and could no longer see the path home. "I did what the world made me do," she whispered. "I took away their reason to hate him." The room fell silent. The villagers looked at one another, some crying, some too afraid to speak. None of them knew whether to pity her or condemn her. By afternoon, the authorities had come. They carried the small, covered bundle away as Noha sat by the door, her eyes fixed on nothing. When the officer asked her to stand, she didn't resist. Her steps were slow, almost graceful, as if she were walking through a dream. Outside, the sun had returned, bright and unforgiving. Morning came quietly, as if afraid to touch the house that grief had already claimed. The storm had passed, leaving behind puddles that shimmered under a pale sky. Birds sang again, soft, hesitant notes that didn't belong in a place where sorrow still breathed. Noha sat in the corner of her room, her shawl clutched tightly around her shoulders. Her eyes were open, but they didn't see. Her body moved slightly with each gust of wind that entered through the cracked window, but inside, she was frozen, a statue built of regret. The cradle beside her was still. The blanket that once held warmth now lay flat and colorless, and the air carried the faint scent of milk and rain. Nothing else. Noha's lips moved, but no sound came out. Her tears had dried long ago. Now there was only emptiness, the kind that makes time stop moving. Outside, the world began to stir. The villagers opened their doors, sweeping water from their doorsteps, calling to each other about the storm. Somewhere, a child laughed, that innocent, careless laughter that cuts through the heart of grief. And then, slowly, word began to spread. Someone had noticed that Noha's lamp, which usually burned through the night, was still dark at dawn. Someone else had heard her crying through the storm. By mid-morning, a small crowd gathered at her gate, faces pressed close, whispering, speculating. Is she all right? Has something happened? Maybe she's finally gone mad. They didn't knock at first. Fear and curiosity held them still. But when a baby's cry didn't answer the morning, when the silence felt too heavy, someone finally pushed the gate open. The door creaked as they entered. The smell of rain mixed with something colder, something human, something final. The villagers stepped in, cautious, eyes darting from the broken lamp to the cradle to the motionless woman in the corner. Noha, one of them called softly. She didn't move. Noha lifted the baby, pressing him close to her chest. His warmth spread through her like forgiveness she didn't deserve. She rocked him gently, humming the lullaby that had carried them through every sleepless night. Her voice was soft, trembling, soaked in grief. "Sleep, my love," she whispered. "Sleep before the world wakes." The candle flickered one last time and went out, plunging the room into darkness. Only the sound of the rain remained steady, relentless, cleansing nothing. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time no longer existed. When lightning flashed, it caught her face in sharp relief, eyes swollen, lips trembling, skin glistening with tears. In that moment, she looked both holy and haunted, a mother on the edge of madness, holding the only thing she ever loved, and the only thing the world would never let her keep. The voices in her head grew louder, fighting over her soul. "He's yours," one pleaded. "Save him," cried another. But louder still came the whisper that had been haunting her for weeks. "End it." Before they do, her arms tightened around the baby. She kissed his forehead, his cheeks, his tiny hands, each kiss a goodbye she couldn't say aloud. "Forgive me," she whispered through her sobs. "Forgive me, my angel. I'm not strong like I thought I was." The storm howled, drowning her words. In the dark, we don't see what she does, only the sound of her cries turning into silence, the cradle rocking once, twice, then still. The camera lingers on the empty room, the flicker of lightning revealing a mother kneeling on the floor, motionless, the blanket falling from her hands. The rain begins to ease. Dawn creeps slowly across the sky, pale and merciless. Light filters through the broken window, touching her face not as punishment, but as a quiet kind of mourning. The world outside wakes, unaware that inside this small house, something sacred has been lost. The cradle remains still, the air heavy with the ghost of a lullaby that will never. The words echoed back at her, cruel and hollow. She covered her face with her hands, sobbing quietly so the baby wouldn't wake. but guilt is louder than any cry. It filled the small room, bouncing off the walls until it became unbearable. She rose suddenly, pacing, her shawl dragging across the floor, her feet bare against the cold dirt. "What did I do wrong?" she asked the shadows. "Why must love hurt like this?" Outside, thunder rolled softly across the hills. A storm was coming, slow and merciless. The air trembled as if the world itself knew what her heart was about to do. She went to the window, staring out at the darkness, the same darkness that had once comforted her. Now it looked back like a mirror, endless and accusing. Somewhere a dog barked, somewhere a baby cried, not hers, another's, and she felt something twist inside her chest. "Maybe they're right," she whispered. "Maybe I'm cursed." The thought terrified her not because it was true, but because she was starting to believe it. She turned back toward the cradle. The baby had stirred, sensing her unease. His small hands reached upward, searching for warmth. That gesture, so simple, so pure, broke her completely. She fell to her knees beside him, tears streaming freely now. "I love you," she said, again and again, clutching his blanket. "I love you more than my life, but I can't keep you here. They'll hurt you. They'll hurt you because of me." Her voice cracked into silence. The storm outside began to wail, rain beating against the tin roof. Each drop sounded like a heartbeat, slow and merciless. The camera lingers on her trembling hands, on the flicker of the dying lamp, on the baby's peaceful face. Outside, the night is calm to calm. Inside, her mind is chaos. This is the beginning of her breaking, not in anger, but in despair. The growing fear has become a storm within her, louder than the thunder that once roared the night her child was born. As the screen fades to black, her lullaby plays faintly in the background, slow, fragile, haunting. It's no longer a song of love, but a song of goodbye she doesn't yet know she's singing. The night began like any other, still, heavy, almost sacred in its quiet. The moon hung low behind a veil of clouds, spilling only a thin silver light through the cracks in Noha's roof. Inside, the air was thick with heat and silence. Even the wind seemed to have forgotten how to breathe. Noha sat on the edge of her bed, her baby asleep beside her. The tiny chest rose and fell with the rhythm of peace, each breath a fragile song that could have saved her if only she could still hear it. But Noha's mind was no longer here. It wandered the dark corners of her fear. She heard the whispers again, not outside this time, but inside her skull, circling like vultures. "You brought shame. He is not yours. The village will take him away." Her hands trembled against her knees. She tried to pray, but her words broke apart like glass in her throat. The candle beside her burned low, its flame flickering wildly as if afraid of what it was about to witness. She looked down at the baby. His face was calm, his lips slightly parted, the same soft brown glow that once filled her heart with wonder. But now, that same color, that beautiful, innocent color, had become her curse. She hated herself for thinking it, for even feeling it, yet the thought had buried itself deep. "If you were fair like them," she whispered, her voice barely a breath, "they would have let us live." Why are they doing this?" she whispered. "You did nothing wrong." Her hands trembled. "And yet they've made me afraid to love you." The baby cooed softly, reaching for her face, his tiny fingers brushing her tears. She broke down then, sobbing so quietly that even the wind seemed to pause. "I'm sorry," she said over and over, her voice cracking. "I'm sorry, my son. Mama's just so tired." Her body shook as she cradled him tighter. The light from the setting sun painted the room in a deep red hue, a color that felt like both love and loss. She wanted to scream, to run, to tell the world that she was a mother, not a monster. But fear had tied her tongue. Over the next few days, the baby's cries began to unsettle her. Not because of their sound, but because she feared the village might hear. Every cry, every giggle, every little noise became a threat. She began keeping the windows shut, even when the air grew stifling. The house that once smelled of milk and warmth now smelled of damp wood and loneliness. She would hush the baby before he even cried, pressing him close, whispering, "Quiet, my love," Don't let them hear you. Don't give them another reason. She no longer noticed how tightly she held him, how desperate her touch had become, and then came the night when she heard footsteps outside. Voices murmuring faint but clear. Maybe we should go see him. No, leave it. That child isn't right. God forgive her.